As the world braces for World War and Our Lady of Fatima's annihilation of nations, we've got questions tonight. Is this the beginning of an apocalyptic new world order? Is this the end of the American empire? And if it's anti-Semitic to oppose Israel's war, why are Israelis living in Israel leading conservatives, liberals, Jews, Christians, and traditional Catholics in demanding a ceasefire?
The worst threat on the very existence of the state of Israel is not posed by Iran or Hezbollah or Hamas, but by our own government.
Plus, tonight, Our Lady of Palestine. Who is she? And why are Catholic Palestinians begging for her intercession as this new year gets underway? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael Mann. This is The Remnant Underground. I want to start out tonight with a special New Year's greeting. Happy and Holy New Year to all of you. But I also want to conclude this 2024 season with a pretty urgent call to prayer. I mean, let's face it, things are, they're very uncertain right now. Over in England, for example, in the UK, King Charles has basically just declared civil war against his own people.
He's picked a side. And it seems to me that he's effectively announced that he's on the side of the state against the people. The trouble is, they're his people.
The situation with the Trump administration is still very unclear. Who's going to be doing what's going to happen over there, where they're going to come down on some of these big issues, like the situation in the Holy Land this Christmas. Things are happening that are very, very concerning, should be specifically and particularly concerning to us as Christians. And they're happening fast. This is like the Blitzkrieg, the lightning war tactic used by the Nazis during World War II very effectively. We're seeing a globalist power struggle among competing blocks of nations now over the establishment of some kind of new world order, friends. Some kind of new world order in the making, right? Will it be BRICS based with Russia and China calling the shots? Will the thing be sort of the old NATO model with the U.S. and Israel leading the charge? These are the questions that are presenting themselves to us now, and we're all watching to see what's going to happen. And I think my opinion is going to be the former. The United States is actually the United States empire is in its last days. It's death throes, if you will. We don't want to admit it. We want to continue to have sort of a Cold War attitude about what's happening. But every empire in decline has always gone through a period like this, where its people just simply cannot accept that it's collapsing. And I think ours is collapsing. So I think that means we better wake up. We better stop with this delusional thinking that the U.S. is an invincible superpower and that we're never going to be affected by this, because that's very dangerous thinking. And the most important thing is for us to keep and maintain the Christocentric perspective, which is so vital to the survival of the counter-revolution, the Catholic counter-revolution, that simply must outlast whatever this Christophobic New World Order turns out to be. See, that's our job. This is it. We need to face a cold and hard reality this New Year's Eve. Life is about to change. I think everybody knows that. And there's hope. There's reason to hope. I said before, this man Donald Trump campaigned on stopping the war. Well, maybe he'll overcome the influence of the billionaires and the Christian Zionist heretics, and maybe something good will happen. Let's pray for that. Let's demand that. Let's ask that. Let's hope for that, right? But we got to stand up and speak out. Because right now the U.S. is isolated and alone, friends. And it's about to make another massive geopolitical blunder like it did back in 2003 with the invasion of Iraq.
But the truth of the matter is the decision by Mr. Biden after the invasion of Gaza by the Israelis to give them 100% support, what is he doing? That wasn't even necessary. He is so wrapped up in the way the world was that he doesn't understand that the Palestinians have won the battle against Israel around the world.
Now again, we just don't know what's going to happen, do we? But we need to speak out. We need to have conversations. We need to stop silencing each other. calling each other names, like ugly names, like anti-Semite for questioning what's happening, right? We got to stop with the identity politics. We can't let identity politics cloud our judgment of what's going on, right? Our identity is Christian. Our identity is Catholic. How does this fit in to the Catholic worldview, to the Christian worldview, to the social kingship of Jesus Christ? That's what we look at. That's the metrics that we look at as soldiers of Jesus Christ. Because we have an obligation before God and history and our children to get this right. Judica me Deus, et discerne causam meam. Judge me, O God, and distinguish my cause from the nation, right? A nation that is not holy. Deliver me from the unjust and deceitful man. What is this? This is the opening prayer, the prayer at the foot of the altar, the steps of the foot of the altar, of the Latin Mass. We pray it every single time we go to Mass. And guess what? We now live in a nation that is no longer holy. Look what we are doing to our children. Look what we are doing to our unborn. Look what we are doing to our elderly and infirm and helpless. We are not a holy nation anymore. We are in the hands, for the most part, of unjust and deceitful men. And in a time like this, in a moment like this, independent and Christocentric thinking, absolutely imperative. It's critical. But that kind of thinking is only possible if we learn to ignore the groupthink, the brainwashing that's going on in politics and on TV. We've been talking about this for a long time. So let's take, for example, the most obvious situation that's unraveling very quickly. As I say, it's a blitzkrieg. What's happening in the Holy Land, ironically, or maybe not so ironically, maybe very poignantly, given our rejection of God and His law, what's happening in the place where Jesus Christ was born this Christmas was carefully planned out for decades. You have to believe me on this. I know some of you who just started kind of paying attention to this stuff, you think it happened on October 7th, but that was the beginning. But only the most naive people believe that genocide and ethnic cleansing in Gaza can be justified still a year and a half later, whatever it's been, as Israel's right to defend herself. Come on, you know this is disproportionate. You know this has to stop. You know there's something else going on here. Right? If you say that that's all it is, well, they're just defending themselves, you're parroting the groupthink narrative. We're talking about Israel. It has a nuclear arsenal. It's a surveillance state such as no one's ever seen. Right? It has AI defense mechanisms and tracking systems. It's state of the art. And you say, well, they're just defending themselves. Really? Don't you think we need to look a little more closely at what's happening here? You know, you don't even need to take my word for it. The Prime Minister of Israel himself makes no bones about this, that something else is going on. He is on offense.
The state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea. This is what happens when you have sovereignty.
From the river to the sea. You see, this war, friends, is moving beyond Gaza now. It's going to the West Bank. It's going to Syria. It's already been to Syria. It's causing Syria to cease to exist. Lebanon, now Iran. You see what's happening? And now, with the full support of the United States, Netanyahu is doing whatever he wants to do.
Israel drops a massive bomb on Syria. Its impact was reportedly registered on the Richter scale. The explosion was measured as a 3.1 magnitude earthquake on the seismic sensor. The Israeli airstrikes on Sunday took place near Syria's coastal region. Damascus says it was the most intense bombardment in the area since 2012.
He's not on defense, Bibi. He's on offense. He's trying to establish Israeli hegemony in the Mideast. That's what this has always been all about. And that, of course, has apocalyptic ramifications for all of us, especially for those of us who are Christians. And it could well lead to Our Lady of Fatima's annihilation of nations. In fact, it already is. So if you're afraid of Muslims, this is going to make it exponentially worse because they're destabilizing the world and they're triggering the Muslim world. And for what? Don't forget, this war in Syria, This was Obama instigated, Barack Obama, okay? You're like, ooh, we finally got Assad. Well, that's what Obama wanted, take Assad down. And it's been a Biden-backed war for the past 4 years on Syria and has resulted now in the humiliation of Russia. And there's going to be a price to pay for that. Don't tell me we can handle Russia, because that's what we were saying when the whole Ukraine thing happened. Oh, we're just going to sanction them, right? Take them down. Russia's exponentially stronger now than she's been in a long, long time. And now we're just ticking Russia off even more, embarrassing her even more, setting up for the second theater in World War III.
To that murderous former KGB colonel, that thug who runs the Russian Federation, you will negotiate now, or the aid that we have given to Ukraine thus far will look like peanuts.
You see why we need to get down on our knees and pray, friends? There's craziness going on here. Donald Trump was the one who said he was going to stop the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Well, God help him. I sure hope he does. But how's that going to happen when this is what the rhetoric is now? You see? Everybody's pulling and pushing at this guy to get him to go in a certain direction, and we don't know what's going to happen, do we? All we know here in America is that the conservative media is out there beating the war drums once again.
There's no reason for war with Iran. None.
But every week, every day, Fox News tells me that there's some, assassination attempt by Iran. They're sending drones from their ships offshore over our country to scope it out for future attacks. I mean, Iran is presented in the U.S. media as the aggressor, trying to kill Trump, for example.
Oh, that's great. Fox News, at it again, just like they were before Afghanistan and all the fiascos and the carnage and death and destruction that happened as a result of those interventions in the name of democracy. So what happens this time?
A war with Iran will be World War III. So that's the point. Iran is not alone, and it will not remain alone. And so if we go to war with Iran, we are expanding the war with Russia.
And this Netanyahu guy just keeps on getting blank checks from the Biden administration, from the White House. He's got a lifetime get out of jail free pass from the talking heads at Fox News. Do you see the problem? The fog of war is already here, and it's only being augmented, friends. This is so crucial. It's being augmented by the very same propaganda machine that masked us up, closed our churches, and got our kids jabbed and boosted for no good reason at all, other than to make you put you under control and to make Bill Gates a crapload of money.
Bill Gates was a major, I think it's fair to say, major proponent of mRNA vaccine technology. He was an investor in BioNTech, which developed the mRNA vaccine for Pfizer. We were just doing some digging, and we see that he actually sold a lot of those shares at how much profit was that?
10x.
So I don't know about you, but I'm not doing that again. I'm not falling for that again. Not that we did the first time, but not even sort of, okay? And to expose the lies, the lying machine, the fake and gay fake news machine this time around, yes, on this show, I will consult the enemy of my enemy, no matter who that happens to be. And that is something that we pointed out back in October of 2023. It doesn't really matter if it puts me on the wrong side of some conservative. If it's the truth, that's where we go. Who is responsible for bombing hospitals and churches and kids over there? I would say surely we can agree that there's a better way of taking out Hamas than the evacuation of 2 million innocent people and bombing hospitals. And if this puts me on the side of AOC, so be it. You, my critics, are on the side of Joy Behar. Who cares? So some of you got on me last Underground, for citing Jeffrey Sachs. I wouldn't be surprised if many of you are familiar with the problems with Jeffrey Sachs because of this show, because we spent a long time discussing our disagreement with him over the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. I get all that. Nothing's changed there. But again, this is crucial. We're at a point now where we need to find the truth. And when it comes to these never-ending neocon wars, it just happens to be that Jeffrey Sachs is sort of a true liberal, right? His concerns are identical to mine on what they're doing with this war machine. They're identical. All the way back to the immoral and disastrous U.S. invasion of Iraq. I have been opposed to it. So has Mr. Sachs. And a lot of people like that. Only in this case, since we're talking about Israel, Sachs being Jewish, he becomes my witness number one for the prosecution. Now let's remember, during the COVID fiasco, they tried to discredit anyone who asked questions what was going on. They tried to discredit us as being anti-science. Remember all that? Trust the science. Until finally it got so ridiculous. Fauci's like, I am science. Questioning me is to question the science. Remember this sheer insanity? Okay, this time around something similar is happening, only it's trust the political science, okay? We'll tell you what it is, you trust it. So it's the same crap, just different epithet. Anyone who questions Israel's war is, sorry to say, an anti-Semite. You see how it works? Same exact MO. Aren't you sick of it? I am.
Well, first of all, thank you. So many things have happened in the last 2 weeks. I keep thinking, where's Jeff Sachs? I want to know what this means. So the most dramatic and, from my perspective, unexpected thing that happened was all of a sudden the government in Syria changed. There was regime change in Syria. Who did that? Why? And what does it mean?
Well, it's part of a 30-year effort. This is Netanyahu's war to remake the Middle East.
Now, that's the truth. I'm not saying that's the truth because Jeffrey Sachs says it. I say that's the truth because it's what I was saying 20 years ago when we were invading Iraq. It's basically the same principles. Well, he's an ever-Trumper. Is he an ever-Trumper? Well, if that's the case, why is Jeffrey Sachs at this point seeming almost desperately to cling to the last hope that Trump will come through and stop this madness?
I'm counting on President Trump to change this. I think his instinct is right. I think his sense is right. I think he doesn't like war. I really do. You know, he
doesn't.
He displayed that in the first term, and he said that repeatedly now. This is the best thing we have going for us.
And again, people say, Michael, man, you've gone off the rails, man. I mean, Sachs is not one of us. He's not even a Christian. To which I say, are you under the impression that Bibi Netanyahu is a Christian? You're defending that guy, right? Everything he does is sacred in the eyes of God, right? He's not a Christian. In fact, he's a thrice divorced and remarried prime minister of Israel whose government pays for most of the many abortions in Israel, pays for them in Israel. He's also big on the LGTBS bit.
In Israel, the LGBT community marches with pride. My unwavering belief is that all people are created equal. This principle of equality is why 16-year-old Shira Banki marched in the parade last year. And it's why thousands of you are marching today.
By the way, Bibi is a bit of a dictator. Have you noticed this? Some of you like to rip on old Vlad the Bad Putin for holding his term of office for an entirely too long period of time, right? Well, guess who the longest serving prime minister in Israel's history is? Bingo! For a combined total of 17 years and counting, this guy's been at it. Does that sound like a champion of democracy to you? It's a dictator. He's a dictator whose most outspoken critics in the world today are Jews. So can we be done with the anti-Semite thing? Can we have a little compassion for the fact that the largest protests in Israel's history are being done by Israelis, by Jewish people on the ground who are terrified of where their country's going? How about that? How about we side with them?
This is ludicrous. The whole government should go home, should go actually to jail. They betrayed the actual notion of the Jewish state, of the state of Israel. They should go to jail.
It's never ever been this urgent. We believe the worst threat on the very existence of the state of Israel is not posed by Iran or Hezbollah or Hamas, but by our own government.
It puts us into a situation that endanger all Israel, not only the people in the south and the people in the north. He's endangering all Israel.
And they, just like the many Christian conservatives out there, why are they protesting? Because they have had enough of the fake and gay news of Bibi Netanyahu.
What is your view of Jewish people, of Judaism?
Yeah.
For the record, what's your view?
My view is that, Judaism is a faith Israel is a state, and it is not above critique, and that what Bibi Netanyahu has done to the Palestinians since October 7th is a Holocaust. It is a Holocaust that is being committed on Palestinian children and women. And I'm not going to quiet my perspective on that, to kowtow to whatever the prevailing narrative is at the New York Post.
And let's be clear about what Candace Owens just said. You know and I know that if the situation were reversed and it was Israeli children who were being carpet bombed and used for target practice, that she would denounce that as a war crime too.
You're saying that children in Gaza are being shot by snipers.
Definitively. I have 2 children that I have photographs of that were shot so perfectly in the chest I couldn't put my stethoscope over their heart more accurately, and directly on the side of the head in the same child. No toddler gets shot twice by mistake by the world's best sniper. And they're dead center shots. All of the disasters I've seen combined, 40 mission trips, 30 years, ground zero, earthquakes, all of that combined doesn't equal the level of carnage that I saw against civilians in just my first week in Gaza.
And when you say civilians, is it mostly children?
Almost exclusively children. I've never seen that before.
Friends, this is getting so perverse, so evil, so sinister, that you almost get the impression that they couldn't be making this mistake by accident. I mean, it's like they're trying over there in Israel right now, they're trying to encourage like a Hamas 2.0, right?
Where there was a study 20 years ago now, looking at Palestinian children, and something like 95% of them 20 years ago showed some symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. A large percentage, lest anybody think that history started on October the 7th, a large percentage of kids wet their beds. They were hostile towards their parents. They had nightmares, anxiety, depression, and so on. This was 20 years ago. And when you think of the young militants who streamed into Israel on October the 7th, guess who those kids were? Guess who those young people were? And of course, that's been going on for decades upon decades upon decades.
So don't you see what's going on here? I don't care where you come down on this, whether it's Palestinian kids or Israeli kids dying, somebody has to stop this. And again, as Christians looking on, if it's up to us then to call for it to stop, to get involved with making sure that this stops, this brutality, this sickness, to try to find some other solution, then we got to do it. And it's not like we're not hearing anything from the people inside over there. They're not completely disconnected from reality or the rest of the world. They do communicate. We hear from them on a regular basis. Here's one right now, Jack, in the comments section over at YouTube under last week's Underground. I'm Palestinian Christian from Nazareth here. Thank you for speaking up. Just found this channel. Keep up the great work, brother. What's happening here, friends, if this continues to go on, there's only one alternative, there's only one explanation. That what we're seeing now is the intentional destabilization of the entire world in order to rebuild or to build up this new world order, whatever it is. And that's why it's important to realize that opposition is coming in from all directions, not just traditional Catholics, not just conservatives, but also liberals, Jews. This guy Glenn Greenwood. He's Jewish. I think he's gay, but he's also considered a political conservative, and he's like a regular on lots of Fox News shows. I think he's still a regular on Tucker Carlson's show. And he says the only thing worse than bombing and destroying 2 million helpless and trapped civilians for a year is deliberately destroying all their hospitals and detaining all doctors so the wounded can't get medical care. That's what you do when you want to ethnically cleanse and annex. Yep. I agree with them. That's exactly what it is. So worldwide protest, in other words, friends, this is what I guess the point of this show, the first thing we have to do is get past this idea that, well, we can't protest it because then we're anti-Semitic. No. You got to get past that. We got a war to fight here. Get past the name calling. Don't let them stop you dead in your tracks right out of the gate with that nonsense. Okay? because worldwide protest is mounting, and not just from lefties on college campuses, Mr. Trump.
And here's what I will do to defeat anti-Semitism and defend our Jewish citizens in America. My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support.
It's so much more than that. Opposition to what is happening in Israel is coming from Catholics, it's coming from conservatives, it's coming from liberals, it's coming from Jews, it's coming from Jewish and Christian intellectuals, historians, even top-notch military experts are calling it a ruthless war of extermination now.
This ruthless war of extermination is going to be confronted soon by overwhelming deadly force provided first and foremost by Iran, also augmented and extended by Russia.
Now, I would remind you, that's a conservative military man. He was appointed by Trump. He was an advisor to Trump. He's calling it for what it is. This is what I meant at the top of the show. Don't let this partisan politics thing throw you. Just look for the truth. Where is the truth? We're not looking for role models. We're looking for the truth here, and the truth is coming in from all directions. Look at it, read it, consider it carefully, prayerfully, consider it. Pope Francis, for heaven's sakes, Pope Francis is speaking out. And as you know, I don't have a lot of good things to say about His Holiness these days, but you know what? He's spot on. Cardinal Ray spoke about the war yesterday. They did not let the Patriarch enter Gaza, as they had promised. And yesterday, children were bombed. This is cruelty. This is not war. I have no time for the man or his policies. But this is a big deal, especially since for years the Vatican has been cowering in fear in the face of these trumped-up charges, which we're going to get into early in 2025. Trumped-up charges that Pope Pius XII was silent during the Holocaust. This is a vicious lie, of course. But this is why what Francis just said is actually more meaningful. It's a good example of us trying to be objective and looking for the truth. Because we can say, oh my gosh, yeah, that's a big risk for Francis to say anything about the genocide in Gaza, because it's a big deal for the Vatican to be charged with anti-Semitism again, right? By demanding that Israel stop this brutality. And so again, I close out the show tonight by reminding this audience that Jewish analysts are leading the charge right now and trying to wake Christians, especially these insipid Christian Zionists, wake them from their stupor and their ridiculous heresies as to what's really going on here. You see what I'm getting at? The discussion of something like genocide, the discussion of something like ethnic cleansing transcends the sort of right versus left paradigm, most of which is pre-programmed for us by the guys on TV. It transcends conservatism versus liberalism, even Christian versus non-Christian now. And again, we're not looking for role models or saints or angels. We're looking for the truth. And again, shouting anti-Semite at us for doing so really is the last refuge of low IQ scoundrels who simply run out of arguments. Nothing else to say. So just start calling names now. You know, so for example, let me give you an example. Can you imagine calling this guy an anti-Semite? He's a Jewish doctor, medical doctor. He's also a Holocaust survivor. Is he, would you say, an anti-Semite?
I completely agree with Netanyahu. The light will triumph over the darkness. He's just a bit confused as to what represents light and darkness. He's one of the darkest minds on the world stage right now. What you're seeing there is a person so alienated from his humanity, so committed to his ego, that, as they say in Hungarian, whatever he says, not even the opposite is true. It's so false, not even the opposite is true. And yeah, Bibi, the light will triumph, despite whatever you can do. And you have a lot of power to impose a lot of suffering, and you will, because that's your nature. That's what you committed to.
Now, if he has the courage to admit the truth, what is wrong with us? And I could sit out here for the next couple hours giving you examples. How about this guy? This man is also Jewish. Certainly no conservative, no Christian, But he's been out trying to wake the Christian world up for years, for 40 years, about what's going on here.
This is the 35th year of a harsh, brutal, and vicious occupation, supported unilaterally by the United States, constant terror and atrocities. Suppose Palestinians say, well, we're under terrorist attack for 35 years, therefore we have a right to carry out suicide bombings.
Which is what they say.
Do you accept this? Does anybody accept it?
Nobody accepts
All
it.
right, then how come everyone accepts the Israeli claim to be doing it, which is a much weaker claim? Because after all, there's no symmetry in this situation. They are the military occupiers. Palestine isn't occupying Israel.
Why does the United States support Israel? Well, there's a history, and a very interesting one. It actually goes back a long time. One thing to remember is that Christian Zionism is a very powerful force, which goes back long before Jewish Zionism. In England particularly, Christian Zionism was a powerful force among British elites. It's part of the motivation for the Balfour Declaration and for Britain's support for Jewish colonization of Israel. Remember, the Bible said, and that's a big part of British elite culture. Same in the United States. Woodrow Wilson was a devout Christian who read the Bible every day. So did Harry Truman. In the Roosevelt administration, one of the leading officials, Harold Ickes, once described the return of the Jews to Palestine as the greatest event in history.
So how about one more? Here is another Jewish intellectual, professor, whose father survived both the Warsaw Ghetto and Auschwitz.
In my opinion, speaking on the basis of what Israeli leaders themselves said after October 7th, this isn't a war against Hamas. This is a war against Gaza. In fact, it's not a war at all. It's a genocide.
You think maybe we can move past the anti-Semite name-calling? Maybe? Just maybe? Do you have anything else? Is that it? No arguments? Just name-calling? Because, of course, you must know that, again, some of the largest protests, right up here on the screen, in the history of Israel, going on right now, protesting Netanyahu's war. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, well, this war don't you think that Israel has the right to defend itself? Duh, right? That's your only argument. But when you look at these guys in Israel, right, Jewish fellows in Israel on the street protesting, do you honestly think that Jews living in Israel are just too darn stupid to see that Israel has a right to defend herself, like you do with your big argument there? Do you honestly think that they believe Israel doesn't have the right to exist? That secretly they're saying, I don't think this country has the right to exist. That's why I'm protesting. Why are you living there then? You see how silly the arguments have become? How silly the excuses have become for not facing the truth that something else is going on here? So everything, as we get into this new year, and as we get serious in what our role in all of this is going to be, we need to stop being afraid of the name calling, first of all. Just move on. We also need to call out the ranting of Christian Zionism, which is the jet fuel for Netanyahu's war. It's embarrassing. It's cringeworthy, okay? That Christian Zionism is a Christian heresy. Very recent one, right? That's obviously what it is. It skips the book of Revelation completely, right? Just ignores the whole New Testament, goes back to Genesis. That's what we're going to have our foreign policy on. That's what we're going to, focus on. Genesis, the Israel, bless Israel, God will bless you. Whatever happened to Jesus Christ fulfilling the old law then? What happened to your Catholic identity? What happened to Christianity? You see? We need to speak up against that. And then we need to speak up for what is happening to Christians worldwide, which is the one area we're not allowed to. The actual real persecution that's going on, the greatest persecuted group in the world today, we're not supposed to talk about that because, well, that just doesn't fit the narrative that we want to be part of, I guess.
I'm a Christian first, okay? And so my concerns are going to be with what's happening to Christians all around the world because it is us. We are the #1 most persecuted religion in the world. And all Christians watching this need to realize the time is now to start speaking up because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time. And the media is very clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of Christians being killed, in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel. How about that?
And let's just close with this, friends, because this is the thing that's so sad. Nobody wants to even address this because, wow, does it ever not fit the narrative, and that is the Christian Palestinians. You know, we cannot forget, especially at Christmas time, let's not forget the Christian Palestinians, our Christian brothers and sisters. You know what they're doing right now? They're over there praying their rosaries. Do you know who they're praying their rosaries, whose intercession they're seeking? They're seeking the intercession as their country is being destroyed. They're seeking the intercession of Our Lady of Palestine.
Yes, we are the children of the Holy Land, at the forefront of those who cherish the fact that the Virgin Mary is the Queen of Palestine. She has given our country honor and dignity. The feast of Our Blessed Lady of Palestine gathered hundreds of Christians from the Holy Land in a solemn popular celebration on the 27th of October.
Now, some of you have been out there parroting this little bit that Palestine isn't a real country, it doesn't even exist. You got it all figured out. If that's the case, how is it that the Feast of Our Lady of Palestine was established in 1927 by the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem? And how is it that that feast day was approved by the Holy See, by the Vatican, in 1933, if Palestine doesn't even exist?
The faithful carried the statue of the Virgin on their shoulders and marched in a long procession along the sanctuary of Our Lady of Palestine, reciting the Rosary and seeking her maternal intercession and affection. Here we stand before you with full confidence in your infinite capability.
Now, those are the people over there that are dying too. Do they look like Hamas to you? Their kids are dying, right? We're not anti-Semites for demanding that their kids stop dying, right? We're not anti-Semites for demanding that this stops happening to people, to anyone's children, Muslims, Christians, Jews, right? We're not Christian Zionist heretics either. We're going to support this kind of nonsense because of some cockamamie reading of the Old Testament, right? Heretical reading of the Old Testament. Friends, here's the bottom line. As we enter into this new year, it's very obvious to anyone who's paying attention that Christ is being driven out of the Holy Land and out of the whole world, and that's the problem. So what does hate, what does genocide, what does ethnic cleansing have to do with Christ, who is love straight through? Any child can answer that question. It should have nothing to do with Christ. It has nothing to do with him, which is why it becomes our holy and sacred mission before God and history to proclaim the social kingship of the Prince of Peace at this particular time, to this particular modern world, hell-bent on uncrowning him and bringing down the wrath of God, right? We need to fight for him. We need to place our trust in him, beg him to deliver us from evil in this new year. Ab homine, iniquo, et doloso, erume me, to deliver me from the unjust and deceitful man, to renew the hearts of his Christian soldiers, to transform us all into true soldiers of Jesus Christ. That's the mission, to become an army of God, the children of light, before it's too late.